Jack here, JB Music and Guitar Lessons. This is Guitar, Gear and Beer, where I take a piece of gear and talk about it while simultaneously reviewing a beer that I've never had before. I'm not sponsored or anything, so this is my own opinion, but you know, I like guitar and I like beer, so it's probably going to veer on the side of positivity. So the gear in question is going to be strings in general, with a slight emphasis on hybrids, because I've just started experimenting with them recently. And in honour of the hybrid things, I've opted for the Black Isle Brewing Company Barrel Aged Series Systems Theory West Coast Edition 9.6%. Okay, Poppels X, because it says 2 organic breweries, 1 imperial stout. So I thought, like, the hybrid, it's 2 things coming together. It's a tenuous connection at best, but I mean, it's hard to match gear with beer. Unless you got suggestions, then please let me know. But yeah, so I used to use rotos for ages, though. Because they gave a free E string, and that's when I'd snap the most, and I like to keep my strings on for as long as possible. Because I think you have to work a bit harder when the strings start to go like a bit naff and a bit, not properly out, but they start to lose that kind of brightness. You have to work a bit harder to get a good tone, and I think it's a good kind of training thing to do. Not good to do all the time, because then your playing's going to suffer. So I just used those for years without question, and then I was, who was I playing with? I can't remember who it was, but there's a band we were touring with, and the guy was like, no, rotos are far too toppy, you want to try our Ernie ball, mate, that's what you want. I was like, much of a muchness, but I think Ernie ball strings are slightly less toppy than rotos, so I kind of like half-heartedly switched to them, but not really. What I tend to do nowadays is I buy my strings online and in bulk. So I'll get like a pack of 3, or if I can get a pack of 5, because you get much more bang for your buck that way. So I don't have any real string loyalty, but as I say, it's kind of been Roto, Ernie Ball, or Diodario, or Didario, and I've never been sure how to pronounce that. I tried Elixir strings years and years ago, but I never really liked them. What I tend to do after I play the gig is I'll take my fast fret or some sort of string cleaner and just rub the strings down to give them a bit more life. But what I've done fairly recently is gone into the hybrids. So if you don't know what hybrids are, they've got like a thicker on the bottom and a thinner on the top. So I put them on this guitar here. So it's 10s going down to 9s, which sounds like it shouldn't make that big of a difference, but it actually really has. So the idea is you can still like dig in with your chords down here, and you don't knock the string out of tune as easily. And then the notes up here, well, the strings, they're easier to bend and easier to have vibrato on. Now, I used 9s for years and years and years because of my little, my dainty little fingers. But what I found was 10s kind of lasted a bit longer. I could get a good sound out of them. And recording, they tended to sound better as well. So something I will say is that I think it's much easier to get. I wouldn't necessarily say a better tone, but a much fuller, much richer tone if you use thicker strings than compared to thinner ones. So an example I can think of here is Stevie Ray Vaughan using very thick strings is kind of like very like vibrant, kind of full, rich kind of. It's still twangy, but it's like a full tone compared to like Billy Gibbons, who I think uses 8s. So it's still like a good tone. I'm not knocking his tone, but it's a lot less kind of like full sounding, and that Stevie Ray Vaughan kind of is just like it's in your face. It's right there. But like I say, I kind of switched to 10s because I noticed when I was recording I could get it to sound a bit bigger and a bit better with less effort, and they seem to kind of keep their tone for a little bit longer. I did actually used to use 12s on one guitar, and I thought, you know, like in Dragon Ball Z, how they go into the hyperbolic time chamber, and they go on like times 10 gravity. So that was like my training guitar, that was like my hyperbolic guitar, because if I could bend a tone on that, I could just be all over the shop on the other ones. But yeah, anyway, a little bit about how time I got in about this beer here. So top tip, if you don't have a bottle opener to hand, simply use your key-shaped screwdriver, which is also a bottle opener. I mean, who doesn't want one of these? It's one of these kind of Christmas gifts you get, and you're like, that won't come in useful. And it does. You keep it on your keyring. Honestly, there's like situations where this has really saved me in a gig where I've like unscrewed something and forgot to screw it in properly. And it's this little guy that saved me. In hindsight, this is a much better screwdriver than it is bottle opener, so I'd maybe avoid that top tip. But yeah, as usual, I'll keep some in the bottle, I'll pop some in a glass and let it breathe a bit. This one is fairly heavy for a beer. It's like a 9.6%, so probably need to breathe a little bit. So the hybrids, a really cool thing about them is I've recently, I'd say over the past like year or so, been trying to get into adding in like longer or bigger compound bends within my playing, so things where you're going up like 3-4 semitones. Which, the way I set up my guitars, I try to keep my action kind of as low as I can, but without it interfering with bends. And I tend to overbend live a lot as well. You get that kind of adrenaline, you get into it, so I tend to keep the tension a bit higher as well. But as I feel I'm beginning to relax a bit more in general, I suppose, I'm maybe thinking it's sometimes a bit of a strain to kind of get those bigger bends. And I do struggle with the compound ones on the 10s. So that's where the 9s have been pretty good, the kind of bigger bends. Yeah, so this beer is a stout. It smells like a stout, and I imagine it will taste much like a stout. It does, but it's also it's really quite sweet, almost kind of treacly. It's very nice. I imagine it will taste nicer from the glass than it will from the bottle. That is really good. I was expecting that to be a lot more kind of pungent or abrasive, given the 9% alcohol rating, because in beer that's normally you're getting into dodgy territory there. But yeah, in terms of tone of strings, I do find I'm not the biggest fan of, having used Stevie Ray Vaughan as an example, I'm not the biggest fan of his tone because I do find it a little bit metallic and rattly because of the thick strings. But having said that, when you're recording, see if you double track and you use one guitar with thicker strings and one with thinner ones, and you can hear like an A-B comparison in a mix, the one with the thicker strings is probably going to sound better. Incredibly controversial thing to say, but I'm leaving it out there. Well, it would be actually, it'd be great if we could start a conversation here about like what your guys' opinions are on strings and that kind of thing. Yeah, so the jury's still kind of out in regards to whether I'm totally on board with these hybrid strings or if I'm not too sure about it. Because I am finding certain liberties you can take with thicker strings where a small finger movement won't move a chord as out of tune, or it won't make the vibrato quite as wonky, whereas with these thinner ones, you're really having to concentrate. And I did go through a phase of putting 8s on a guitar for that reason, to get this really kind of incredibly delicate kind of sound where every tiny movement matters. And I suppose that's kind of what it boils down to. If you want the Stevie Ray Vaughan approach, where you can kind of, the importance is like you really have to feel it to make those bends and to get that vibrato and to make it sound like you really need to dig in and feel it. Whereas with the 8s or thinner strings, you kind of need to be much more, I don't know, almost kind of more zen about it. You need to concentrate on every tiny detail. I suppose those are kind of the two opposite ends of the spectrum. It's this thing where you really need to go for it, or you really need to kind of like hold back and concentrate on what you're doing. So back to this lovely beer we have here, and it is pretty lovely, to be honest. I mean, it's just like, okay, it's a very sweet stout, as stouts go. If you like Baileys, if you like putting Baileys in a stout or something like that, you'll probably quite enjoy this, I would imagine. It's got a kind of fairly bitter aftertaste, as you might imagine, but nothing too profound. And like I say, quite a kind of treacly, viscose, I wouldn't say milky, but kind of a Baileys-esque texture to it and taste, which is, it's nice, but I'd have to take my time with it. If I don't, I will start yammering even more than I am just now. So for an example on this kind of delicate thing I've been talking about, I did a Ely John Roth Pro Tips thing where I kind of looked at his style of playing and tried to analyse it in just a few categories. I mean, there's a lot more to his playing than I'll ever get through in a short video. But I think I would have really struggled to do that on the way I've got my guitar set up with the 10s, particularly with he's got this really fast, narrow vibrato. It's like a half rhyme, which always confuses my head. And I think I would really struggle to do that if there was more tension. I still struggle to do it anyway, because he does have a fantastic vibrato, and emulating it is no easy feat. But that is an advantage of the hybrids, and when I'm kind of a bit more drawn to them. What I would say is they really, for me, have brought out the Strat sound of that Strat. Like when I'm playing it, it feels and sounds more like a Strat, which probably sounds a bit weird, but Strats have got this kind of like snarly, kind of raunchy tone to it, but in this kind of trebly way, kind of Les Paul's much of a kind of warmer, kind of deeper sound. Telly's probably more nasal, Strats probably a bit more throaty. It's somewhere in between. And it's really brought out those kind of like, it's just those kind of Strat sounds and those vibes, which is pretty cool. Because if you've got different guitars, you do want them to kind of sound like the thing as much as you want to be able to cover as much scope with one guitar as you can. If you can kind of get like, oh, that sounds like a Strat, that's pretty cool. So I can confirm that this is tasting better to me out of the glass. It seems to sort of calm it down a little bit. It tastes nice out of the bottle, I'd say better out of the glass. And it is just like it's not as heavy as you'd expect it to be, but it's a stout, so it is like that. I'd say it's very much like a winter beer. Like, you'd want to drink this, you're in the pub, it's snowing outside, or it's raining, it's cold, you come in, you've got your nose is all cold, your fingers are cold. There's a fireplace, why not? It's an imaginary pub, let's just put a fireplace there. And you get a nice pint of this. It's going to kind of fill you up, it's going to warm you up a little bit, going to make you feel better, I think. Downside with the hybrids, as I said near the start of this video, what I found with nines is they didn't have the kind of brilliance that a string has for quite as long, and I have noticed that on the top three strings. They have dulled a lot quicker than I would have thought, that I've kind of become used to with my tens. I say a lot quicker, I've not done a scientific experiment, so this could all be in my head. And a lot of the things like the sound perception might be based on biases or ideas that I have that I'm just kind of projecting on this rather than kind of actual objective truth. I suppose the final thing to mention here about strings really is that I've recently ventured into the world of boiling guitar strings just to see what would happen as an experiment. So I've boiled bass strings in the past, maybe boiled them once or twice and then change them. And what it does is basically if your strings are all kind of crusty and rusty, then the brilliance, the high end is gone. You chuck them in a pot of boiling water for like 10, maybe 15 minutes maximum. Take them out, dry them on a towel and put them back on, and all that kind of crud that's on them will have come off and they'll sound much brighter and much more resonant again. And I'd heard kind of through the grapevine that you could do this on guitar strings as well. So I was a bit skeptical. I've tried it out and I'm not too impressed with the results. They don't sound too bad, but they don't feel nice. They don't feel new again. So I might try and do a slightly more scientific experiment on this rather than just my anecdotal experience. But if any of you guys have had success or horrendous failures with boiling guitar strings, or if you even thought about doing it, do let me know. Yeah, so my kind of final thoughts here. Strings, I think for the foreseeable future I will probably stick with my tens being a creature of comfort. But I'm gonna experiment with these hybrids a bit more and see if they are better for me and better for my playing. But I'm not entirely convinced by them. I am, however, very much convinced by this beer. It might be the higher alcohol percentage speaking here. It might be the nice taste, but yeah, so it's like a stout. It's got initially a very kind of it's smooth. It's got like a nice kind of treacly sweetness to it, like bordering on that kind of coffee kind of chocolate undertone as you quite often get from a stout, with a slightly not that bitter, but a little bit of a bitter and perhaps slightly dry aftertaste. So if you like that sort of thing, this is such a long name, the Black Isle Brewing Company Barrel Aged Series System Theory West Coast Edition 9.6% Poppels X might be worthwhile trying out. It's a local one for me, so it's quite easy for me to get. I don't know how accessible it'll be for anyone else. So yeah, please let me know about your string theories. If there's anything I should try out, any impressions I've got here that you think are totally wrong. I'm always looking for new things to try, so do please let me know. Anyway, if you've enjoyed it, check out some of my other videos, hit subscribe, share, like, and enable notifications with that little bell on the side, if you feel so inclined. Cheers, guys.